Hello, everyone. Good evening. If you're in the Midwest like me, hopefully you all can hear me here. I'm gonna make sure that everything's working. That's good. Okay, let's switch over. Hey, how's it going? Welcome to the Microsoft 365 Virtual Marathon. My name is John Moore. I'm your host for the next 50 minutes, as well as the producer of this event. So a little bit of multitasking here this evening for me. And you are in the session Self-Service Live Events with Yammer and Microsoft Stream. And for the next 45 to 50 minutes, we're going to talk about some cool technology for live video in the enterprise. But to get started, the big announcement for today was that the SharePoint conference has changed its name to the Microsoft Collaboration Conference. It's going to be held next March in Las Vegas. I hope to see you there. I'm really excited about it. And I wanted to thank our generous sponsors for putting on this event. This couldn't have happened without the gracious sponsorship of all of these organizations on the screen. So to get started, let me introduce myself real quick. A little bit about me. My name is John Moore, and I'm out of Kansas City, Missouri, right in the middle of the United States, coming to you live from my home office, like all of us are these days. And I'm a lead technology architect at Cerner Corporation. Cerner is a large healthcare technology institution. We're a global company with 30,000 employees. We call our employees associates at Cerner. And I'm also a Microsoft MVP in the Office Apps and Services category. I've been doing end user computing with internal IT for the last 13 years. I started out as a Mac guy doing the Mac management for Cerner, moved into virtual desktop infrastructure and did Citrix for almost a decade, and then moved on from there to collaboration and productivity with the Office 365 suite. And when I'm not working or doing Office 365 stuff, I would consider myself a maker plus technologist. So I like doing things with my hands. I like woodworking and doing things creative. So I like photography as well, but applying technology to that. So with woodworking, I like to utilize CNCs and 3D printers to do digital fabrication. And with photography, I'm really into flying drones and the technology around drone photography. If you want to follow along with me for the next little bit here, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at John_Moore, and feel free to @reply me, and we can chat back and forth. So our agenda for the next hour here is we're going to go down 5 areas, and we're going to start by preaching to the choir a little bit of why live video is cool, and specifically why live video in Office 365 is really cool. And then we're going to talk about how to plan, execute, and finish strong when it comes to your live event. So we're actually going to go into Yammer, schedule a live event, walk through that process, as well as some tips and tricks for while your live event is going on. Then we'll finally get into the gear. If I started out with gear, we probably would be here all night, geeking out about all the stuff that you can spend your money on. Then I'm going to show a little bit of an overview of my own live event setup. So we're actually going to create a quick live scene and go live on Yammer and show what that process looks like. And then what I actually use, how everything plugs in a visual that you can take with you. And then what's next? I want to give you some resources that you can take with you to guide you on the journey into producing live events and high quality live events when it comes to Yammer and Microsoft Stream specifically. So why live video? Why video in general? I don't think I need to probably convince anybody why video specifically is cool. A quick story, my garbage disposal went out about 6 months ago, and I did what all millennials do these days, which is rather than calling a plumber like you would have done, you know, if I was in the situation in the 90s or even the early 2000s, instead I immediately went over to YouTube and started searching for how can I replace my own garbage disposal? And that's really how everybody learns things these days. We typically go down the YouTube path if we need to learn something new, or if we're considering buying something, we'll spend hours or days looking at review videos and watching influencers and things like that to try to, you know, see if we want to make this purchase. And when it comes to live video, that's even more authentic and engaging. You've already got the benefit of video and showing someone something, which you can do much more effectively than words a lot of times. Live video specifically is authentic and engaging. You have the person in front of you live. So we're actually talking, you're seeing me live right now, just a few seconds delayed. And with that, you can interact with that person. So the audience can kind of guide the conversation where they want it to go. And what we find is in a Forrester report, even in 2017, so a whole 3 years ago, they found that users tend to watch live video 10 to 20 times longer than on-demand video. And I'm sure that in 2020, it's even more engaging and even more sticky than that. People will stay with your live event knowing that it's live and they can interact with the person and hear their name called. Specific to Office 365, some of the goodness that Microsoft 365 lays onto live video or brings to the table is that persistent Q&A. We have a Q&A here in the Teams live event, which, by the way, if you have a question, post that in the Q&A and we'll get to that at the end here. But once everybody leaves that live event in a Teams live event, the Q&A goes away. With a Yammer live event, that communication can continue on beyond and continue to build the community. So community members can add to the Q&A, they can help each other out, or the presenter can come back in and keep answering questions and keep interacting with the community, which is very empowering to the members of your community. Now, really cool thing about Microsoft Stream specifically over like a Teams meeting is a lot of times if you're like how my meetings go, you end up about 5 minutes late to your next meeting. We don't really account for time to walk between meetings when we're on campus. Well, with joining a live event in Office 365, you can do time shifting. So you can join 5 minutes late, but because it's in Office 365, you can click that little slider and you can move it back to the start time, and then you can catch up. So even though you joined a little bit late, you're not left out like you are in an actual meeting or a conference call. Now, some of the intelligence with the Microsoft Cloud brings us transcription and facial recognition. So all of your videos, including the live videos in Microsoft Stream, are able to be transcribed, and that transcript is searchable. So if somebody is watching the video and it's an hour and a half long, they can search for key points and it will jump to that point in the timeline for them. Likewise, if you have a town hall with a lot of executives there, it will recognize the faces in the video and lay them on the timeline in the People tab. So if you want to just see what the executive vice president for your organization had to say, you can click on the People tab and you will see little bubbles where that person was on screen. So you can fast forward to just those parts if you want to. Power of Azure. So how do we turn on live events? How do we start up our journey down live events? Well, it's a lot easier than you might think. All you have to do is go into the Stream admin, the live events section, and turn on that switch. So to show you what that looks like, let's go ahead and hop out of here real quick and go into our browser. There it is. So good old Contoso, we're logged in as Megan Bowen, and she happens to be a Stream administrator. So she's going to open up Microsoft Stream here and just go simply into the admin settings. So you click that gear at the top and we're going to hit admin. And then the third item down happens to be live events. So she's going to click on that and make sure that that switch is turned on. And now anybody in your organization will be able to create live events in Stream or in Yammer communities. You can also from the screen see what is live now in your organization, and you can see what events are upcoming. So you can edit those as a Streams admin. You can also see who created that. You can even delete those if you need to. So everything that's happening in Stream is right from this admin section right here. So it's really easy to turn on these live events, but there are some considerations, some things you want to keep in mind. First is, how are you going to train everybody and roll out access? You certainly can turn it on for the entire organization, and maybe that's appropriate for you. At Cerner, we're pretty on the bleeding edge of technology, but with live events, we haven't necessarily turned it on for everyone quite yet. What we've done, as you'll see in the screenshot right here, we've scoped this privilege to an Active Directory group. So we have GDIY live streamers. Then what we've set up is that we've developed training so that people understand the limitations of live events, how live events work, some of the best practices. They take a short quiz to demonstrate their knowledge of live events, and then they get added to that Active Directory group. Now they can schedule live events. Along the lines of limitations, there's some limitations of the platform that you might want to keep in mind. The first is when it comes to live events, you have a few limitations on the capacity of the features. The first is under normal circumstances, you have your live events can last for 4 hours. You can have up to 10,000 attendees in a live event, and you can have up to 15 live events for your organization, so across your whole company. Now, that might not seem like a whole lot, but at Cerner with 30,000 people, we have only seen 3 concurrent live events. This event right now is obviously the exception where we have 20 couple rooms going on at the same time, but normally we only see 3 concurrent live events. Now, with the COVID-19 pandemic going on, Microsoft has actually raised those limitations until July. So now in the COVID situation, you can have a live event up to 16 hours in length. You can have up to 20,000 attendees, and you can have up to 50 concurrent live events going on in your tenant. With that 20,000 attendee limit, you can even push that up to 100,000 if you go through the live event assistance program provided by Microsoft. So if you download these slides at the end, and we'll have links to download those, you'll click the link in the notes for this slide. That will take you to the live event assistance program, and you can actually get help from Microsoft hosting your first event. They can create a custom event for you that goes up to 100,000. And then finally, if you're in a corporate environment like our large corporate network where we have large campuses with thousands of people in the buildings, we don't have that right now, but under normal circumstances, you want to think about optimizing your environment for live video and for Microsoft Stream. Microsoft has partnered with a few eCDN providers, including Collective, Hive, and Ramp, where they will basically, you set up infrastructure within your corporate network that caches the live stream or caches those videos locally. And then your users, when they go to connect to a Stream live event, it will detect that there is a cache available and it will direct them over to that cache. So it takes the load off of your internet bandwidth for your entire corporate network. Now, with all of us staying at home right now, we're just connecting directly to Microsoft, so there's no worry there. But it might be something to consider if you have a constrained corporate network where you are. So moving on, we've got live events turned on. We're ready to run down that path. Well, first we start out by scheduling our live event. And again, that's fairly easy to do. You just have to be a community owner in a Yammer community in order to schedule that. So if you're one of those community managers, you don't have to worry about your users going buck wild and just scheduling live events without you overseeing that. Only the owners of the community can do that. So we're going to take a look real quick at how we actually set up a live event. We're going to go into Yammer real quick here, and we're going to create a live event in Contoso. So Megan, she owns the operations group here, and she wants to do a town hall or some type of a live event. So along the right-hand side of Yammer, you'll see that now you have this button for Create Live Event. If we click on that, you have one choice that you make up front. You're going to choose either external encoding or Teams encoding. And now with Teams encoding, that's the quick start option. That's what we're doing today, actually. You have some layout options. You're seeing me right now side by side with my screen. Wait, on this side, over here on this side is my screen. You've got my camera on the right-hand side, and that works great. But if you want company branding, if you want to be able to rearrange and have like a panel view or something like that, you're going to want to choose that external app or device, because then you can connect a third-party encoder software or hardware device, and you can rearrange things however you want on the screen. So we're going to select external app. We're going to call this demo for M365 Virtual Marathon. Then we're going to add a second producer, and I'll show you why here in a second. We're going to add Miriam. She's going to be my second producer. And then you would put the time and the date, and you'd go ahead and hit schedule. Now what you're taken to is the landing page for Yammer here for this particular live event. And there's a few things that you're going to want to be aware of on this screen. The first is you may want to add a comment down here at the bottom that says, hey everybody, welcome to our live event. If you have any questions leading up to it, feel free to post them right here. You can kind of get the conversation going before the live event even starts. If you want to share this, you can copy a link by clicking the share button right there, and you can get a Yammer attendee link, which will take them directly to this page. And then as the producer, you're going to want to make sure when the time comes to start setting up your event, I'm going to go ahead and click on that. What that will do is it will spin up the RTMP destination in Azure Media Services so that you have something to connect to. So it actually spins up this URL for you to put into your encoder. And where do we get that URL? That's over here along the right-hand side. So we're going to go to step number 2, which is to copy this ingest URL. So we're going to copy that to our clipboard and then go back over here to the slides. So it's really easy to schedule. That kind of explains the Teams encoding versus the external encoding. And then you want to identify 3 roles for your live event is what I recommend. You have the role of producer. That's the person who decides what's on screen and can actually start and stop the live event. I recommend that you add another person and you call them the Q&A moderator. You want to have somebody focusing, especially with a large event, you want to have them focusing specifically on the Q&A and make sure that questions are being answered, the community is behaving properly, things like that. And then obviously you have your presenters. They're going to own their content. And by splitting out your producer from your presenter, you get to have the presenter only worry about their own content. They don't have to worry about the technology side of it. The reason why you want that moderator, though, is another secretive reason, is that you have a backup producer. Another quick story here at Cerner, we had a live event all scheduled to go. Hundreds of people were going to join it. And the only producer that we had, the person who organized it, she went into labor 3 days early and was on maternity leave at the time. So what did we do? We had to reschedule our entire event. We had to change the link, send it out, that kind of embarrassing email. We had to send out to hundreds of people. And now we always have a moderator because now we have a backup producer for those live events. So that's a little pro tip. And then finally, it comes time to promote it. We talked about posting on Yammer. That's going to get your hardcore community members who are already in Yammer. But a great thing about live events is you can drive people to your Yammer group, and they can discover a Yammer group that they don't really interact with all that much. Well, my philosophy on that is I typically go 2 different ways depending on the live event. I either send an Outlook invite that's a calendar invitation, or I'll set up a SharePoint event that's that I advertise. And really the way that I decide between that is if the expectation is that people need to attend this and it's like an organization's director and their org under them, then we'll send that out as a calendar invite because you're pretty much expected to be there. Now, if this is a pure community event and I just want to talk about something cool and invite people to it, if they show up, great. If they don't show up, it doesn't really hurt my feelings that bad. Then I'll create a SharePoint event because that's a pull method. They can add it to their calendar. So think of it this way. The Outlook invite on the calendar, that is a push. You're pushing that out to their calendar. The SharePoint event, they can pull that down to their calendar. So depending on the style of your event, you want to either push that out or allow them to pull it down. And then a couple tips during your live event as you go along, it comes time to actually do the event. If you can get in the same room, like under normal circumstances, and people can be close enough together, you know, after there's a vaccine for COVID-19, you want to make sure that everybody shows up early. It's not appropriate for the executive to show up 5 minutes before and just expect that they can plug in and go. I always require people to show up at least 30 to 60 minutes early so that we can make sure that everything sounds good. We can actually do a test, and then we know that it's going to work properly. You also want to be able to, you know, discuss during the live event while it's going on. In a Teams live event, we actually have a sidebar discussion built in. There's a chat that exists in this Teams live event where I can speak with the other producers and the other speakers, and the attendees don't see that. When it comes to a Yammer live event, we don't have that same private sidebar area. So my recommendation is to create a group chat within Microsoft Teams add all of your organizers to that so that you guys can have that chat. You can tell the presenter to, pull their microphone up closer. You can let them know there's a background noise, something like that. By me doing this all by myself, I'm not aware of that, so I hope this sounds and looks okay. And then again, that moderator is key to the success of the event. And the main reason for that is they run that Q&A, they make sure that the lag is not noticeable. The worst thing you can do as an organizer or a presenter in a live event is to go all the way to the end of the event and then ask for questions. And the reason is there's an inherent delay when it comes to any live event technology, whether it's in Microsoft 365, YouTube, Facebook, any of these technologies has a lag. So if you get to the end and then you ask for questions, you're going to awkwardly wait with no air, with dead air for a good minute as people hear that call for questions and then type their questions in the QA. So this is your reminder again to go ahead and put your questions in the QA for this live event. And then if we have time, we'll go over Q&A. And if we don't, I'll stick around and we'll do text-based Q&A. And then also that moderator, you're going to want them to be able to capture some action items for follow-up. A lot of times presenters will promise a link and they'll say, oh, well, I'll get a link for that and I'll send it to you. Make sure the moderator writes that down so that you can hold the presenter accountable to that. So you have the perfect event. It's time to celebrate. Everybody goes home and takes a good rest. Well, that's good, but you also want to make sure that you follow through with your live event. And the biggest thing you can do is leverage the Yammer piece of this to keep the conversation going. You want to keep that community strong, keep it healthy. And the way that you do that is by not leaving people hanging. So if there's been follow-up links promised, make sure that you post those follow-up links, even the next day. If questions come in after the event because someone watched it on the other side of the globe 12 hours in the future, make sure that the presenter goes back and interacts with those people so that they're not left out, even though they were in a different time zone. Next, if you're the community manager, you're going to geek out about analytics. You're going to want to collect those analytics. I usually wait to pull the group insights until a week after the live event. You want to give it some time so that you can see what your group or community looked like beforehand and what your community looked like afterward. You want to determine, like, was this even valuable? Did this live event matter? And you can see that by hopefully seeing more engagement than the week before in your Yammer community. Now, for more targeted, pointed feedback, I always recommend a post-event survey. If you want to click on this link when you download the slides, this gives you a sample Microsoft form with some sample questions. This is where I want to ask people, how was the quality of the event? Was the video okay? Was the audio okay separately? Was the timing of this okay? Would it be better if we did it in the morning, in the afternoon for you? What topics do you want to hear in the future? You can get actual specific feedback that's even more valuable a lot of times by asking people to fill out a survey at the end. And there will be a survey at the end of this live event, actually. And then you want to use this opportunity to also build your champion network if at all possible. If you notice that people are answering each other's questions and you have somebody who's really engaged and they're going out and jumping on questions and helping people out, providing value to the community, come up next to that person and invite them into your champions network. If you don't have a champions group, then this might be a good time to start it, and they can be one of those starting members. But if you have one existing, always be on the lookout for fresh new champions to kind of carry your message for you in your community. Okay, so now let's talk about the fun stuff, the expensive stuff, gear. So I'm hoping that what I've learned over the past year and a half or 2 years will save you a little bit of money, because I've spent a lot of money on gear that didn't really pan out, and I've lost a lot of money on Facebook by trying to resell it. So when we dive into gear, it's a fun topic to get into, but it's also a little bit of a slippery slope. Now, we like to focus a lot of times on the camera, and that's probably the funnest part of the gear selection. But I would posit to you that audio is always more important than video. People will tend to continue watching a video that's blurry or a little bit pixelated, or the lighting doesn't look great. But if it hurts their ears, they'll jump out right away. They'll be done with it. So if you're going to spend your money, my recommendation is to spend your money on the audio side of things. Spend it on a good microphone. So what types of microphones are out there? My opinion, you never want to use the microphone that's built into your laptop. You want to have some type of external microphone. A lot of times people use headsets. That might work great for a lot of people. Some people might not want to have the look of something on their head. So when you look at other microphones, what I typically use is I like to have a lapel microphone, the device in the top left here. That's what I'm wearing right now, actually, is this little capsule here. It clips to my shirt, and then if I walk away, if I wander around my room and kind of wander around a stage, my voice sounds consistent. It's right in front of me the entire time. So if you have a wanderer, a lapel mic might work really well for them. If you're going to be stationary at a desk, almost like a video podcast, then you might look at one of these options like this Yeti caster right here. If you were really eagle-eyed and you were looking in Jeff Teeper's keynote, he had one of these clipped to his desk behind him. It was a really cool looking prop. But this brings the microphone closer to your mouth so that you have that great radio voice. It also looks cool on camera, and honestly, don't discount that, because if you have a good looking piece of equipment on there, it subconsciously tells your audience that you care about the quality, you care about them having a good experience. When it comes to the Yeti caster specifically, though, the inclination is to go out and buy the Yeti, and people are probably gonna be upset about this, but I would honestly think twice about the Yeti. The Yeti is called a condenser microphone, and it's very, very sensitive. It sounds wonderful in a room that's appropriate for it. So if you're in a nice quiet room, maybe that's sound treated, the Yeti is amazing. It sounds great. But if you're in an open office environment, or you're like me, you have an air conditioner on the other side of the wall right here, or you have a dog outside, you might look at a dynamic microphone. When you're searching out on Amazon, search for a dynamic microphone over a condenser microphone, and that will kind of shut out the background noise and the other disruptions a little bit better. Finally, with audio, you want to make sure that you have some type of way to capture the presenter's audio from their laptop. So if they just show up with their laptop, I've noticed that a lot of directors, a lot of executives, they think it's real cool to share a video in their PowerPoint slide deck, and they all seem to want to show some kind of a video during their presentation. My advice is to plan for that and have a way to bring that video into the live event if at all possible. Now, how do you capture that video? Well, or that audio? You also capture it along with the presenter's video. And we do that with presenter screen capture technology. If you can be in the same room as the presenter, then the producer, they do all of the mixing together on their laptop, the encoding, sending to Microsoft Stream. With the presenter, they're going to plug into your laptop somehow. Well, they typically have an HDMI output. This is called a game capture device or an HDMI capture device. It will pull in the HDMI feed from the presenter's laptop, and it will change it into USB-C so that you can plug it into the producer's laptop and you get what's on their screen over to the live event. Now, if you're in an auditorium or somewhere where you have a projector available, this actually has pass-through, so it has HDMI output as well. So it will pass through to the projector, and you're basically stealing the feed off on the side via USB for the live event, so you have a high quality feed. And we'll talk in a little bit about how to capture that remotely as well. Then it comes to the camera, finally, the cool camera. A lot of people start out with the USB webcam, and that's a wonderful place to start. And honestly, for most people, that's where it ends. Get an external USB webcam if you can find one these days. The ones that I recommend the most are from Logitech. This is a Logitech C920. There's other models out there, the C922, the Brio. There's a new one called the StreamCam. In my opinion, the C920 or even the 922 tends to be about the best bang for the buck. When you go into spending more money for 4K webcams, that's when you start looking at wanting to do HDMI capture again. So a lot like how you captured the presenter's screen, look at a mirrorless camera. That's what I'm using right now. And why does a camera with an interchangeable lens work out really well? Well, the one reason is it's better in low light. So there's some dark spots behind me and they're not super grainy because I have a bigger sensor in that camera. And then I also have the ability with a fast lens to be in focus here, but the background is a little bit blurry. So I kind of stand out off of the background a little bit. It draws focus to the presenter. One thing you want to think about as well is lighting. When you're lighting the subject, you want the light coming mostly from the front. This is a diagram of typical 3-point lighting. If you have nothing else, use the natural light. I have a window right next to me. I can open that up and that will cast light on my face to make me stand out. But the problem is I can't control that natural light. So it works great for most people, but if you can control the light better, then you can do your live event in the morning when it's cloudy, when it's sunny outside, because you can control all of that lighting. Now, to show you an example, this is what my room looks like normally. I have just regular ceiling lights and I don't stand out very much. The light from my laptop is shining up here on my face at a weird angle and I kind of have blended into the background a little bit more. Well, with the click of a button, I can turn on this key light that's 45 degrees off from me, and then I can turn down these background lights here, and then I kind of stand out against the background. Now, I would kind of be flat against the background if I didn't have this backlight right here, this 20% light. That's what this little bit of hair light above me, the light above me is actually turned down to about 20% so that I have something that kind of rounds out my head and makes me look three-dimensional. And then finally, you might want to look at a green screen. I haven't personally used green screens very much, but there's an excellent article in the slides here by Nate Chamberlain, another Office MVP, where he goes into depth about what to buy when it comes to a green screen. Most importantly, how to light it so that the green screen effect works well. And with a green screen, you can actually get rid of this background and then you can have your head and shoulders on top of your presentation so that it looks really professional and you're not covering so much of your slides. So talking about fully remote live events, now that we're in a situation where everyone is working from home, we need to figure out how to get everybody into the same live event when they're not in the same place physically. It's really easy for them just to stand in front of a USB webcam in a conference room, but we can't do that right now. So what I recommend is looking at some technology where you can actually virtually bring them into your encoder as individual camera sources so you can rearrange them on the screen however you'd like. The most popular one, probably the one I use the most, is something called NDI. This is a network display technology from NewTek, and it's built into a lot of encoders, and it's even built into Skype, and soon it will be built into Microsoft Teams. So today, if you download Skype for the Skype consumer version, which is Skype for creators, you can check a box to enable NDI in the settings for Skype, and then it will basically see every person in the Skype call as a separate individual source, so you can bring that in and you can have everybody side by side, kind of like a newscast where you've got the 3 people live via satellite. You can do that with Skype and NDI. Soon, Microsoft actually announced last week at the Build conference that they're bringing NDI support to Microsoft Teams, which is huge for us because now I don't have to have the presenters go to another technology. They can just use Microsoft Teams, which they already have, they already use. They just join a meeting. I can split them up and put them onto a branded screen with my corporate branding, which is awesome. 2 other things that I've looked at recently that aren't along the lines of NDI are an entire all-in-one solution called StreamYard. So this is a browser-based solution where you're doing peer-to-peer video, and it's using the Chrome or Edge browser to transfer their video, their audio, and they can even screen share using that. If you want to bring it into a more traditional environment, then there's a new service called OBS.Ninja, and there's a link to it in the notes here as well, where you can they can join this browser solution. It does peer-to-peer WebRTC video, and it generates a link that you put in your encoder. So you basically pull everybody's feed individually using a URL. My recommendation is find an external encoder with NDI support and use Skype soon, use Teams when NDI is available. There's a lot of encoders that have it built in, like Streamlabs OBS, some hardware encoders like from Epiphan. They support NDI out of the box. If you're doing OBS Studio, which I typically recommend for your first foray into this world, there is a free plugin called OBS NDI, and that will make the encoder work with that Skype feature so that you can bring everybody in separately. The most important thing here is to watch out for an echo. You want to make sure that you schedule a tech check, and I'm not talking like 30 minutes before even. Do your tech check a day before or a week before your live event, because you're going to want to work through all of these remote issues, and the most common issue is having an echo. You want to make sure that everybody speaks one person at a time so you can watch the mixer and make sure that everybody's not, echoing on top of each other. Beyond that, the typical things that you want to check out in a tech check are first the network for the presenter. You want to make sure they can get as close to their Wi-Fi router as possible, or if at all possible, if they can stretch an Ethernet cable and plug into their network, you're going to have a much better experience. They're not going to drop out and be choppy and have weird robotic sounds that you can get in a conference call. Check their network. That's the most important. The next is audio, obviously. We're going to look for an external microphone, if at all possible, probably a headset. A lot of people have a USB headset. The most important thing, and the thing that I fight with presenters on a little bit, a lot of executives, they want to use the speaker in their laptop because they're at home. Well, don't allow them to do that. Make them put on some headphones or wear some type of an earbud, because it will cause that echo. It's like the old radio show call-in, where if somebody calls in, they have their car radio on, it echoes back into their phone and it causes a feedback loop. They're going to do that with their laptop if they use their laptop speakers. So the rule is no speakers at all. Now, if they fight on that, I usually bring up the fact that if they ever watch CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, you'll notice that a lot of the people they bring in over satellite have an earbud in their ear. They have like an AirPod hanging out. And my feeling is, if it's good enough to do a presentation in front of millions of people watching CNN, then it's good enough for this, vice president who thinks that he doesn't like to have an earbud hanging out of his ear. No speakers is my rule. So that concludes the tech check. The only other thing you're going to want to do is the camera. Make sure it's up at eye level and that the light is coming in at their face. They're not sitting in front of a window silhouetted. So onto the encoding software. This is the encoding software that I've been talking about. It's called OBS Studio. It's a free download for Mac, PC, or Linux. And they all kind of have the same basic concepts. So we have the preview up here in the left hand of the screen. That's what's up next. So I'm queuing up the next scene. The program is what everybody is seeing. So right now in this Teams live event, what you're seeing right now is over in that right hand view called the program view. And then across the bottom here, the concepts are, we have sources. That's going to be your microphone, your camera, your presenter's screen, maybe some text that you want to put on the screen. If you have a company logo, all of those things are called sources. You bring those into your list, and when you lay them out on the screen, you're putting together what's called a scene. And then you're just switching scenes between, a split screen or a full camera view or a full screen view back to the split screen. Those are just scenes. They're collections or layouts of sources. Then you want to keep an eye on this audio mixer down here at the bottom. This is where you're going to see everybody's microphone laid out. The general rule of thumb is, if you can listen to it, that's great. But visually, you can really get pretty much there by just looking at the colors on this bar. And the rule of thumb is nobody ever goes red. Don't let anything go into the red, because that means it's clipping. What you want to do is you want to click on these little faders and you want to drag them down until you're not in the red anymore. For spoken voices, you want that to generally be in the yellow area. And then for background music or the presenter's laptop, you want that to be in the top part of the green. So when you do your sound check at the beginning, if you adjust everything to where it looks like that, then it's going to pretty much sound great. You're not going to have to worry about it. And some options for encoders that are out there. This is OBS Studio. It's free. StreamYard is a very simple, this is a little bit complex, has a learning curve. StreamYard, I'm kind of geeking out about it lately because it's all browser based. There is a free tier, but you do have to pay $20 a month if you want to stream to Microsoft Stream because you have to put in that RTMP address that will show. If you want to go real high end, there's hardware encoders out there that takes the pressure off of your laptop so that it has its own processing power, its own network connection that goes directly to the Azure Media Services RTMP address that was set up. And then finally, if you're just getting started, you can do Teams encoding, which is what we're doing right here. But this is an intermediate session. We're talking about raising that level, doing corporate branding, stuff like that. So we're kind of past the Teams encoding for this particular use case. So here's how I actually set this up. If I walk into a table, this is what I'm pulling out of my backpack and setting up for an in-person presentation. What we have is we have the microphone that's plugged in. That's a wireless microphone at the top that's plugged into this camera. Then that camera is coming out over HDMI into this capture device, which turns it into USB. That comes into the producer's laptop. Next, I have the capture card, this black square right here. This is that Elgato capture device, and that is coming into the producer's laptop. When the presenter walks in, I basically hand them a microphone and hand them an HDMI cable. They just plug into that, and they just got to worry about their slides. So the presenter is coming into the laptop there. They're also passing through that HDMI output over here to the projector. And then I use this device here called a Stream Deck. That's the button I was pushing to change my lights. That allows you to switch those scenes, mute people, unmute people, all with the press of a button. That's coming to the presenter's laptop as well, or the producer's laptop. That's all getting mixed together in OBS to create a scene, and then that's going off to my Yammer live event. So to show you what this actually looks like here, I actually have OBS up and running. And we're going to create a scene in like 2 minutes here and then move on. So this is what OBS looks like when you first start it up. You have that studio mode, you've got the preview, the program, and there's just nothing. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a 2-scene simple layout. We're going to start with the input here. We've got the microphone, and I'm going to select that USB capture device from here, the CamLink 4K. And then we're going to add a video capture, call that the camera. And you guessed it, we're going to pick this webcam right here that I'm pointing at. I want the highest quality possible. And there's just a camera and a microphone. So that's what it sounds like, what it looks like. If I move that over to program, then now people can hear what that mic sounds like. You'll see that I'm getting into the red a little bit as I get excited and talk a little bit louder. I can drag that down to where I'm comfortably in the yellow, and then I know that I'm not going to clip too bad. Well, what a lot of people do is they'll set up also a split screen, or they want to do picture in picture. So we can do that really easily. We're just going to right click and duplicate this scene that we created. We're going to call that picture in picture. And then we're going to drag this camera. We're going to make it smaller right there. And then I want to add my screen. I'm just going to go ahead and add my computer screen over here using a display capture. If you're using one of those HDMI capture cards, it's going to be just another video device. But since I don't have a second device here, I can actually capture my laptop. And there's that screen. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. And I'm going to move the camera on top. And there we go. We've got a nice little split screen layout that we can have me in the bottom corner and my screen behind me. Now, how do I get this over to Yammer? That's really easily. We have started the setup, so it created that RTMP server for me. Again, I'm going to go copy that RTMP address. And then in OBS, you go into the settings, then the stream, you want to set that to custom. You want to paste that URL in right there. It does require some type of a key. You can literally type the word key in here. You can type anything that you want just to put some text in that box and hit OK. And then we're going to start streaming. In a moment, this box in the bottom corner that you can probably not see is going to turn green. That means I am sending data to Microsoft and it is receiving that data successfully. And then here in about 10, maybe 15 seconds, We're going to see this light up, and we're going to see that little split screen view here in just a moment. And this would be like a loading screen. Hey, we're going to get started soon. But now it's receiving data from my computer into the Microsoft Cloud. I can go ahead, I can start that event up right here. You'll see there's that little delay. It's about 30 seconds behind. Now that operations group right here, if I zoom in, you'll see that that went live. That notifies all of those users that we're now live on Yammer. If they have the mobile app installed and they're in that group or that community, it will actually push them a notification letting them know that we're live now. And then they can just go here, it's pinned to the top. If they click on that, they can watch this video. They can add a comment down at the bottom. One of the coolest things about this Yammer experience is if I go somewhere else in Yammer, it will actually minimize the video down to the bottom corner, so the video will keep playing if I'm going somewhere else within the Yammer website. So that's a quick demo of actually setting up a live event in OBS in a few minutes and pushing it out to the Microsoft Stream service. Now what we've done at Cerner is we've created a kit where we have a hardware encoder. This is a picture of that you can download. We've simplified it a little bit in that we have preloaded scenes on here, so they don't have to build that scene themselves. They just check out this kit and plug it in. The device streams directly to the Microsoft services, so they don't have to worry about configuring things quite as much. It outputs to a projector. And then we didn't want to have to teach them how shutter speed and aperture and all that works on a camera, so we opted for a USB webcam. We've got a C920. The presenter's laptop plugs in right here, and then that wireless microphone that I'm wearing, that plugs in right there as well. If they want to be really slick, they can plug their phone in to the headphone jack, and then they can even play music before their live event is live, which is a great idea. You can have a pre-show and a post-show, so you can really end strong if you want to. And then if you have a remote presenter, somebody that you're bringing in, remember you're going to bring them in over Teams. Until we have NDI, what we do is we have the caller call the other presenter, and then we just show that Teams call up on the presenter's screen, so that's how we bring it into the encoder. That's all configured using a producer's laptop as well. If you follow me on Twitter, I'm going to be doing a lot more live streams on YouTube here in the near future, where we're going to set this stuff up and actually deep dive into the configuration of all that, because we definitely don't have time in the next 3 minutes to go really deep into that gear. Finally, how do I configure it to look good? What does it look like to have a live event for me? To show you some pictures, some screen captures from Microsoft Stream live events, we always have a pre-show. So I always start with a scene that has some music playing, has a video playing. I like to have a timer. You see this 8-minute timer? That tells people if they come in early, when are we going to start? It tells them their video is working and their audio is working, because they can hear something and they can see movement on the screen. So now you don't get that pre-show question that's like, hey, are we going to start? Hey, is anybody talking right now? You can eliminate that by having a pre-show. Then what we do is we go live. This is that live scene where I had that kind of picture-in-picture. I like to do a side-by-side. So I can squeeze down the camera a little bit, have it next to the presenter's laptop. I can put our corporate logo right there in the corner. And then I can even fill this space with something like an agenda. So I just have some text on the screen that tells people like, okay, where are we and where are we heading? You hopefully never have to use this, but I always add a technical difficulty screen. If you know, everything goes crazy, then I can switch over to that BRB screen. And the important thing here is you want no microphones in that scene, because you don't want people to hear you fixing the problem and probably cursing the whole time. So have no microphones. And then we have an end scene. You want to end strong. So again, we're going to play some music. And this is where I put the QR code for that survey right there. So people can scan their screen. They can let me know what they thought about our live event, if it was worth having a live event for the thing that we were doing. So to finish this out here, where do we go from here? What I would recommend, download these slides, click on all of these links so you can get all of these resources. This will take you directly to OBS, so you can download that free software, get started with OBS. If that looks too intimidating, you may look at StreamYard. There's a link to that a couple slides ago. If you're going to go into OBS, there's a YouTube playlist. This guy, he's a Twitch streamer. There's actually a huge community of people using OBS. so you can learn from the experts in the gaming world. And then I recommend that you test this like crazy. I create an empty Yammer group and I push live events to that Yammer group all of the time. So use that for your test group, and then start out with some low pressure events. Don't start out with your CEO right off the bat. Start out with something that doesn't matter quite so much. And then if the people are nervous about having live presentations, host a watch party of a pre-recorded message. It's kind of like a Nintendo Direct. You can actually record it and then play back that video in OBS with high quality sound, high quality video. Looking for some documentation, there's all of Microsoft's docs on this subject, as well as a Yammer live event playbook. Download this PDF because it has basically the cheat sheet for doing everything in your Yammer community related to live events. So with that, a couple housekeeping items, and then we'll wrap this up. If you haven't already, make sure that you go to this bit.ly URL so that you can answer at least 5 questions correct, get entered to win a cool VR headset. And then, of course, go in, and if you're so inclined, please donate to the COVID-19 relief funds. There's 2 of them listed here for the United Way, as well as the International Medical Corps. I encourage you to contribute if you can. And I want to thank you guys for joining us. I know that there was questions in the Q&A, but we're at time. So I'm going to be producing our next live event here in 10 minutes, and I will answer a lot of those questions in the chat if you stick around. If you want to stick around here for the next 9 minutes, we're going to be having the next session. I would encourage you to attend is Dr. Lawrence Lockley. He's going to be presenting to us about COVID-19 and the impact on adoption for Microsoft Teams and Yammer. So it's a lot along the lines of this topic. So stick around with us for the next 9 minutes. We'll get Dr. Lee queued up here, and we'll see you at the top of the hour. Thanks a lot for attending.